Members of council, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here, members of staff. It's nice to see that we do have some individuals that are interested in the town business, so thank you for being here. It has been moved by Councillor Rybak, second by Councillor King, that the agenda for the October 6, 2014 regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted. Are there any, do you have to remove that item?
Yes, you should remove.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Rybak, would you remove that item?
Yes, I move that that item that was moved from COW to council be removed from this agenda.
Remember that item.
522 is the...
522. Councillor Pat, you second that?
Yes, I do.
Any discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Any other amendments to the agenda? There being none, all those in favor? Motion carried as amended. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof.
Now,
Do any
Mr.
members
Mayor.
have any conflicts? Can that be so noted in the minutes? The first item has been moved by Councillor Rybak, seconded by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the 2014 third quarter revenue and expenditure report be received for information. Discussion. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our treasurer, I had just one question, and that pertains to members of council in terms of material and supplies. And there was a general note that it pertained to professional development, but could you expand on that a little bit, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there was an extra expense for FCN conference, or a conference that was attended to by council and approved to be attended by. There is savings in other areas in that department to offset that expenditure, so it's still on target.
Okay, thank you.
Federation of Canadian Municipalities of Canada conference.
Yep, thank you.
That we attended. Okay. Anyone else? Looks like we're on track. So thank you, Madam Treasurer. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Poised to take that. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Lane. The Committee of the Whole recommend to Council the 2014 third quarter capital project update report be received for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Rybak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just pause to point out that it's very difficult to throw rocks at a achievement that shows no brackets, all that completed work under budget. I didn't really make that observation.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Others? Councillor Papp?
Just quickly through you to the treasurer of the CAO, is there any projects that we anticipate that will not be completed during this fiscal year?
Sorry, through you, we don't anticipate that there's any projects that won't be completed.
Yeah. Because sometimes things happen and then we have to delay them and defer them. That's fine. Glad to hear that.
Okay, thank you. Any others? There being none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole received the September 2014 Corporate Services Monthly Report for information. Questions or comments? Councillor Papp?
Again, just too quick, the banking tender, I'm little, maybe Madam Clerk can tell me, you're going to bring it back to Committee of the Whole in November, but in fact, our tenure's done. So is this for council in November? Council approval, or you're seeking approval of this council of the bank tender confirmation, right?
Madam President?
I'm just looking at protocol, because I'm trying to think of how we complete our business at the end of this term.
The report for the banking tender can come the first meeting in December as well, if that's what the protocol is. It
Yes.
does not take into effect until January 1 anyway, so
So the new council would then be responsible for approving that tender.
that's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just,
I think staff should look at it, depending, yeah. Mr. CEO?
If council's not in a lame duck position, it can be approved in November. That'll
that's
be
what I'm
determined
thinking. We're
after the
not in a
election.
lame duck. Why can't we do it then?
Yeah, you You in theory could. It depends on the outcome of the election, and the decision about what meeting to load on what agenda will be made
Right,
based on
that's
that.
why tactically I'm thinking of how to move it forward. Yep,
But it
okay.
does end December 31st, is that correct? Okay.
Okay, good. That's,
Others? Councillor Lane?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, item number 23, water and wastewater project. I wonder if Treasurer might just explain a little about what this pin access is at the site versus what's going on now, because I personally have been in touch with some water haulers, and I'd just like to get a little information.
Madam Treasurer?
We met with the company Berksco that dealt with the equipment down at the site regarding some of the issues that we had at a meeting of the water haulers about 2 months ago, I believe. I brought that report to council as well. Some of the issues that we're having with the cards is they become dirty and they can't be used at the site, so they're having to make several trips back and forth here to have their cards replaced or fixed or whatever, and the cards are expensive as well. So we were looking at other options to have at the site specifically so that they didn't have to come to town hall as regularly. And one of those options is to have a key fob and pin system so that the key fob identifies who they are. They type in their pin. It knows automatically how much water money they have loaded at the site. It's a smart site. So we can connect and communicate from here and transfer information down there and vice versa. So it becomes a better tool for them, and it will provide an outlet for some of these problems that they were having.
I mean,
Go ahead, please.
so they load that up the same as they would, and this is just a different way of accessing it? They
Yeah,
still have to load it up, right?
They have to load it up, but we are looking at ways of making it that most of them load up quite a bit, so they won't have to come in as often. The times they come in are because they're having problems with the cards mostly. So they load it up right through the software application, so it's quite different, and then we send it a communicate down to the site, and it automatically is down at the site before they get there, so.
I was asked once about, through you, Mr. Mayor, from one of the haulers, and they were, I guess they, pardon my English, found it a pain in the butt that each one of their drivers has to have a separate card or whatever to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. Is there any way that could be streamlined for the haulers, the few that have maybe 4 or 5 drivers that could access that at any one time?
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Or
It's
Madam
not
Treasurer,
possible
sorry.
with the current system that we have because everybody is required a card when they go to the site. So they have to put funds on that card to be able to use it like any other pay-as-you-go type card. But going forward, they'll all have a PIN access where they don't have to carry a card anymore, and they just go to the site and use the PIN access.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any others to this area? Okay, others do other portions of the report. Madam Treasurer, notification of leaks. Unfortunately, we don't have comparison of months, which is something I hope you'll do next year. Notification of leaks, 134. Is that high? It appears high.
It is high for this time frame, but it's typically, we notify after a leak someone might have a leak in 12 days, and then it goes up to 24 or a full month or whatever, that the leak is continuous. So we've expanded how many we're actually accessing with the leak notification as well. Even if we see that it's been a leak and then it stopped leaking and then it comes back on, we've identified those as a call out as well, just to give them a heads up that there could be something wrong with their system and to look at that.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. It appears high. Any others? Okay, there being none, I'm going to call the question on receipt of the treasurer's report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. The next item has been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Drilley. The Committee of the Whole received the issue summary report regarding the neighborhood traffic management plans effectiveness update for information. Discussion. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Mantle. When I look at these statistics, and I question the relevance of the difference. It's probably statistically not significant, that the drop from 64 to 60 and 53 to 50. It seems to me that there's, all the steps and measures that we've taken have had, at best, a very limited impact. And I guess my question to you is it because we haven't measured it long enough and they haven't had a chance to have an impact on their drivers, or is it that they just haven't worked and we need to be looking at further remediation in that area?
Mr. Mantle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If council will recall, staff were directed to review the effectiveness of the program on a short-term basis. So that's what we've done here. We received additional information on Friday from the Speed Watch unit and found that there was even more, the drop was even greater. We'd only done this, I think, in one direction. So additional counts were done in the opposite direction. I think it's just on Haste. I can't remember if it was both streets or not, but they indicated that there's a more significant drop. And then the next step is to put out the actual traffic counts, which categorize the counts of vehicles going both ways over a 24-hour period. In this case, the Speed Watch was set out for several days, and we don't know what the 24-hour count was. So we just simply give you a general idea that there does seem to be some change. Most traffic studies will indicate that drivers typically drive slightly over the speed limit, and it's rare that you'll find somebody actually driving at 50 kilometers per hour. So this seems to be keeping in line with what is found out there. And again, we look at this with the work that we've done, that it indicates there is some sort of a result, minor in nature, but again, there is a result.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So your expectation is that these measures that we've taken over a matter of time will actually have a much greater impact, and over the long term, we're going to see that we'll get closer to the actual speed limit?
Yes, that's what we hope. And right now, there's a lot of cut-through traffic on both streets, traffic trying to avoid Highway 20 down Pelham Street and over Holt and up Haste, that sort of thing. You'll see them going around there's quite a bit extra traffic there. Same thing with Pancake, they're bypassing the construction downtown. So we're going to try and do counts in November to match the counts that were done last year, and then also again next spring once construction's kind of done, so we get a better, you can see more of a seasonal change and more of a construction when there is no construction related traffic.
Go ahead.
One final question, Mr. Mayor. So are there other areas that have done these sort of control measures and done these sort of studies where they found after a certain period of time you reach a baseline that you've accomplished exactly what as much as you're going to accomplish, and after that you actually probably regress to some degree? So I just wonder if there's been any other studies that you're aware of that would indicate that, how long we need to monitor this before we begin to look at other alternative measures.
Well, I've done no analysis
I see.
on it, but we'll continue monitoring it over the long term to see, because it's a good check to see. The information is valuable for traffic count purposes, to see what traffic is using the street, and the speed limit, the speed indication is a byproduct of those counts.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Durley.
Just for information through you, Mr. Mayor, I was on Pancake Lane today between Haste and Effingham, and that's where I got the complaint of high speed, especially coming down that hill, and the lady that was injured in a wheelchair. So the concern is coming down, it is very hilly part of the way down, and coming down one of the hills is where this actually happened, and that's, they said that the speeds are not getting any slower. So.
Thank you. For information of council, I did also receive, I think I copied council on it, but an email from a concerned resident about, this was a few weeks ago, about nearly being hit on Pancake, and I sent it to the district commander of the Niagara Regional Police Service. and they put out some enforcement units there, and on behalf of council, I received kudos because from a neighbor who said the police were here, they caught somebody, and they weren't very happy because they were getting double the fine. So the community safety zone may help as well, but we'll have to keep monitoring it. Thank you. Anything else on this? Mr. Mantle, has this been circulated, or can we also circulate this to the members of this, I'll call it committee for lack of a better word, this group?
We haven't circulated yet. We want to bring it to council first, but
Okay.
it will be circulated to the members of the traffic management committees, both of them.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Mantle, for your work on that.
Welcome.
The next item has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Durley, that Committee of the Whole receive the September 2014 Public Works and Utilities Department report for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Kersey, Ribbiak. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope you will allow me a bit of latitude. What I'd like to bring up is not specifically mentioned in here, but it does pertain to Public Works and Utilities.
Okay, if you allow me the same latitude on another issue, but go ahead.
Is this a trading? Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to direct a question to Mr. Mantle. Mr. Mantle, I have some concerns about what I see happening along Effingham Street from Luffman south to, I forget what the name of the little street is off to the side, where we are beginning to, we have lost all of the stone shoulders, and in fact, we're now starting to lose some of the paved shoulders due to drainage issues out there. And they don't seem, other than specifically around culverts, nothing seems to have been done to remediate that area and to prevent the further loss and erosion that's taking place out there. And I'm fearful we're going to lose a significant amount of the paved shoulders if we don't do something soon. Could you comment on that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the area in question was subjected to, well, the floods of spring 2014 washed out part of Effingham Street at the bridge, and we're well aware of the damage that's along there. We have two tenders that are underway right at the moment. One is our asphalt repair program. The other is our ditching program. Both programs target that area. The ditching program includes filter cloth and riprap rubble, so to speak, to reinforce the roadside ditch. The asphalt repair program deals with the asphalt on the shoulder.
Go ahead.
As a follow-up, Mr. Mantle, I wonder, was this a function of the severity of the storm, or was it a function of perhaps some of the engineering and the type of material that was utilized when it was initially done? And is there any recourse back to the original design?
Mr. Mantle.
I don't believe so. I think it was simply the severity of the rainstorm. Like, just judging by the damage that we've had around town, and the erosion that occurred, again, the bridge just down the road underneath Effingham Street washed out the side, took down part of the guide rail at the same time. So again, it was a rainstorm like none we've seen.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I had Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of areas that I'd like to explore with Mr. Mantle, if you allow me. First should be fairly quick. With respect to the Rural Watershed Master Study request for proposal, this is the project to examine the tributaries of the Ridgeville drain to determine if there's a need to expand, et cetera. Mr. Mantle, through you, Mr. Mayor, is this part of the 5-year program that we were talking about starting at some point? Is this the first stage of that? Just can you help me understand where this fits in that bigger picture?
Mr. Mantle.
Yes, this is stage 1 of the 5-year program.
So this is stage 1, and it would be completed when, do you think?
They'll complete it this year, I would think. Like the request for proposals will arrive next week, and we'll review them and award immediately to commence the study.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, Mr. Mayor, so what would be the next stage, and what would be the timing of that, just so I have a sense of how we're pacing this?
I think we're working from east to west across the town. So this is the Ridgeville drain. I think the next one is Disher drain, I think, is the next one as you proceed to the west. So we'll do that one next year.
Thank you. And so it's our intent, is it, Mr. Mantle, that we do one a year? Is that why it would take 5 years?
That is correct. Again, once we find out kind of what the cost of these are, maybe we can accelerate the program.
Okay.
We budgeted $100,000 for this, but it's examining a lot of things, culvert sizes, expansion of the drain itself. So, and we heard earlier tonight about the involvement of expanding a drain, creating municipal drains. So there's a fair amount of work, and it gets to be quite costly.
True, and just one last question with respect to that. It says part of the project also includes a review of road cross culverts within that drainage area to determine if they are the appropriate size. Is this appropriate size to drain the road, or is it appropriate size to manage water generally as it flows through to those locations?
Well, since we're examining the, as a municipal drain, we're looking to see if it can service the area that's upstream. So it's the watershed area.
The watershed area, not just the roads.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have another.
Okay, anyone else on that aspect? No? Go ahead.
Thank you. This is with respect to Fenwick revitalization. Just to comment, first of all, I appreciate the effort that is being made currently to ensure that the page that has been added to the town's website to describe what's happening in Fenwick will be easier to reach. I don't know whether others have tried to be brought up to speed on that page and had the same difficulty that I had in just not being able to find it. It was there, but you had to know how to get to it. So that's going to be made easier, and I appreciate your efforts, sir, in helping that move along. We are behind, I guess, according to the original schedule, so I wonder, Mr. Mandel, if you could give us just a little bit of detail as to what caused us to be behind. I know that there's a general comment about the need to get rid of soil in a particular way, but also what efforts might be made to help catch up, or what the impacts are on life in Fenwick during this extended period of time. When do you think that we'll be back? Just flesh that out a bit more for us, if you don't mind, please.
Mr. Mandel.
Mr. Mayor, I've been assured by the general contractor on the project that there should be a fair amount of excitement tomorrow. The landscaping crew will arrive to start doing the underground work for the tree planting baskets. So they're really keen to get going, because that was the reason they bid the job, was that it's for all the landscaping work that's involved. So
Right.
the curb work has been, I think, approximately 75% of it has been constructed. So now they have something to work to. There's a vertical and a horizontal alignment for them to work against, so they know exactly where they need to be. Hydro One's been excellent on this project. They really made an effort to work with the contractor and work with the town to speed things along. And they've, again, started, I think in the report we identified, I think they have everybody connected on Maple Street already, out of the new transformer there. So, and they've started work on the connections on Canberra Road. So it seems to be going along fairly well. I don't know, again, everything's weather dependent, you know, whether we'll catch up with the project. The deepest of the storm sewers now been constructed. The contaminated soil's been removed, so it should be, again, I cross my fingers, clear sailing from here on in, but there's always those unusual, unforeseen situations that may slow things down, but it should move a lot quicker now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So our CAO was brave enough in his report to indicate that we might be able to make up some time on the landscaping. Can you back him up on that?
I always do.
That's great. How about some detail around that?
He did indicate that landscaping will be starting tomorrow.
But I guess my question, Mr. Mayor, is do we expect to make up some time in the parts of the project that we haven't come up to as yet?
Well, I think the storm sewer will move along quicker now. It's a smaller pipe. As you work your way up through the system, it becomes smaller. And so they can lay on a lot quicker. The contaminated soil's out of the way, and the dewatering system's already in place. So they should be able to go as fast as they can dig now. And I think they also plan to start the restoration work on Church Street, paving the road to get that back into service.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, through you, the original plan, I think, was to be finished by the end of October. What's your best guess at this point, Mr. Mennel?
Well, as I think we see on the schedule, I think it's the end of November is where we're at right now.
So we've lost a month. Thank you, Mr. Mennel. And I do appreciate how the contractors are going about this project. People are pretty pleased with the kind of cooperation they get in keeping the town as workable as it is. So the project generally works very, very well.
Thanks.
But we have slowed down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to that, do we have the schedule posted on the website? I saw it at the post office, I think.
Yes, we do.
Okay. I thought it would be included here, it wasn't, so if we can maybe circulate that, that'd be helpful, or post it on the website. Any others to that item? Councillor Kersey, to that item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of quick questions. First question pertains to the contaminated soil. Do we have some final numbers in terms of the amount of soil that had to be removed and the costs that have been incurred in the additional stone and the disposal of the soil?
Mr. Mantle?
They had originally estimated 1,000 tons, but I think it's much less than that. So there'd be a savings there, but, and I think that unit cost was $30 or $35 a ton, is what we had said before. So there's that plus the trucking costs, and but on the plus side, the stone's already in the hole, so the stone gets reused again as backfill material.
And just as a follow-up question, and maybe a question that Mr. Mantle can answer, given that we did drill holes and tried to identify whether in fact there was subsurface contamination, have we been able to obtain an explanation from the geotechnical consultants as to why this came out as a surprise and did not come out in the test holes that were presumably done and analyzed?
Mr. Mantle?
Yes, most geotechnical experts will always have a disclaimer on their reports that indicate these are the results at this location, but a meter away, it could be something entirely different. I think
I see.
you'll see that in every one of their reports.
I see, okay. Thank you. So they were well CYA'd then.
Okay, thank you. Others? I indicated to council that there was an issue that I'd like to raise that may not be directly in this report, and and I didn't tell council ahead of time, so I apologize. I did speak to the CEO about it. This is regards to some of the information I've received from some folks, especially in the college and the Emmett area, flooding in the backyards, and I'm sure those that serve that area have received similar complaints. I spoke to Mr. Cook, Ryan Cook, about it, and he indicated that the town couldn't do anything because we haven't approved a drainage bylaw. I said, what's a drainage bylaw? Well, apparently it's a bylaw that will allow for a municipality to oversee and make sure that swales, which is I think what Councillor Kersey was talking about under the environmental protection bylaw, but swales are maintained and that water is dealt with. I spoke to solicitor for another municipality, i.e. Burlington, about it. Burlington has it. It's important for them as they are recovering from their rain event that they had. And I just thought that maybe we could direct staff to investigate the potential for a drainage bylaw, separate from, the Drainage Act and all those things that, and I know the City of Welland, I think, approved one, et cetera. So all I'm suggesting is that council would direct staff to investigate whether that might be of help in some of the flooding that would be occurring. So, Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having been involved with that end in the past, because it used to be in Ward 3, the challenges that are arising are because people filled in a swale that was put there originally. Now, can we go on private property and dig another swale? Like, the people have already ruined the process, and that's what's causing a lot of this problem. So it's much like a situation we talked about earlier. It's man-made, and it's not the way it was designed. So because of that change, we're suffering the consequences. So, and I lived with it for 11 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is it something we want to ask staff to investigate to see whether it's a possible solution?
Wouldn't hurt to get a report.
Councillor Papp?
Well, as Councillor Durley says, why don't we look at the merits of putting into place this type of, you want to call it regulatory type of bylaw, and see whether it works for us, and come back with staff can report back on implications and the impact that'll have.
Okay, thank you. So we would direct staff to investigate, it would be called a drainage bylaw, as a potential solution to some of the.
How about just saying a solution to flooding in the Emmett College
That's
area?
even better,
That
Councillor Durley.
would be not specific to any swale or anything, but that would be overall look at it.
Okay.
can we not put a limit on just that specific neighborhood? Because in fact, even though there are drainage plans put in place in new subdivisions, my understanding that we do not enforce the drainage plans that are in place. And so consequently, you get the same thing. These older neighborhoods, it's become more apparent, but as time goes on, the newer subdivisions are gonna be in the same boat. So I'd like to hear a report on the overall situation as opposed to just that neighborhood.
Okay, Councilor Durley, you okay with that? To the College and Emmett area and other areas that are affected by drainage or something? Impacted by drainage?
And, yeah.
Well, we don't know whether it's a drainage bylaw, you know, it could be other things. It might be, I know other municipalities have it. So, Councilor Papp, your motion is to direct staff to investigate a solution to the Emmett and College area, or to?
Emmett College area and other relevant and adjacent properties that could be affected by this. The reality is, and I can draw, Councilor Durley, I can tell you, we had this issue with a major subdivision that's located off Line Avenue. It's the same thing. People didn't, remember, John? They didn't enforce it. We ran into the same thing, and this could bring back, and then we'll leave it up to planning. We couldn't do anything. People were altering waterways, back installing pools that were. So this may be worthwhile, like I said, a regulatory tool that we can use.
Right. Okay, Councilor Durley, you okay with that?
Yeah, but there is another area as well on Line Avenue where,
Right.
behind the development where there's Cuke's house and, I can't tell you the exact addresses, but where water comes in pools there because it used to go where the sidewalk now is, and the sidewalk now stops it, so it becomes a
Right.
skating rink.
Right.
And this
Right.
has been, ever since we put the sidewalk in, has been a problem. Been reported to town and nothing ever has happened.
Okay, thank you.
That works.
All right, so we're going to call the question on Councilor Papp's motion, which is direct staff to investigate a solution, Emmett College area and other relevant and adjacent areas. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. And now to the rest of the report as amended. Anything further? There being none, I call the question as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. As amended. Thank you. Been moved by Councilor Kersey, second by Councilor Durley. Committee of the Whole received the issue summary report for the Heritage Pelham Advisory Committee update. Discussion. There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Thank you to staff for your work on this important issue, so thank you for that. The next item has been moved by Councilor Durley, second by Councilor King, that the Committee of the Whole receive the issue summary report regarding the proposed design of the designation plaque. And the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council approve the proposed design of the designation plaque, and the Committee of the Whole direct planning staff to begin the procurement process for plaques with the town's purchasing coordinator. Discussion, Councilor Durley.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Mayor, we're quite a ways away from anything being designated, so I'm wondering, and I'll ask the director, are we premature in putting money aside for something that is not going to be used for a few years?
Mr. Glover.
Mr. Mayor, we're hoping that this is the first step into a campaign even to get properties designated. We're moving towards, so this would be the first step in terms of having a plaque to show people what they would have on their buildings. Secondly, we're looking for an inventory to expand the inventory, as well as to get from that inventory in the first report, or actually in this report, I believe, was how the inventory would look, so that we can then move to designation. So in terms of a couple years away, we're hoping optimistically that we may have something designated hopefully next year, by near the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also aware that the committee has worked hard on developing this, and if they believe that they're ready for a plaque, I would think that would be something that we could recognize by following through.
Okay, thank you. Others? I found it, maybe Mr. Glover, you can answer this, maybe you can't, but I found it interesting. These plaques don't have any date, whereas one of them, I think it was Thorold, had a circa 1922. Councilor Durley, can you comment on that?
That discussion was taken ad nauseum, and the.
Okay, well, let's not do that here.
The numbers, that, if you look at MPAC's records that estimate construction, they're not always right, and you look at others. So it's very, very difficult to, number one, find an exact date, or number two, find a circuit date, because, you know, some of the building may have been 1812, and some might have been 1850, and some
Okay.
might have been 1950. So they decided that rather than to put something that may be controversial, it's better to not have a number at all.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. The clerk indicated in the notes that the, not ad nauseum, but was lengthy discussion. So,
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Glover.
Mr. Glover, you want to build on what Councillor
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir,
Councillor
thank you.
Durley said?
To add that, just a generic a plate that would be used on every household was cost effective. To change the dates or change information on it was
That's
very
fair,
cost
too.
prohibitive.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that clarity. Any further comments? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. We look forward to the potential designation. I know that, having spoken to a committee member, they were interested in some town facilities. So it's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor Keane, that Committee of the Whole receive the September 2014 Community Planning and Development Services Report for information. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although it's not listed in the meetings, I just wonder through you to ask the director, how have the discussions with the LCBO been going?
Councillor
Through Mr. Mayor,
Glover, sorry.
I would say in 2 words, not good.
Okay.
However, in the report through the bylaw enforcement, they've decided not to move ahead with any proposal, effectively withdrawing their application for any variance. In saying that, I've expressed my disappointment in that action, and I just had a phone call this afternoon with many follow-up calls that they're looking to perhaps plant some Boston ivy or something along the footing of the building so that it will grow up and it will soften the view onto the street. Other than that, though, there isn't much interest in doing anything else, and I had to persuade them, I guess, to assist them to do that. But we're working together as a team, and the LCBO and the town to do the best product we can do.
Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Others to that item? Are the awnings signs? Because they have whatever it is they have on them?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, those are incidental signs. They're not signs, they're incidental. So they're not, they're exempt, they're not, don't apply to them.
Thank you. Anything further to the Director's report for Planning and Development? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I have some questions with respect to the Wheelan Heights neighborhood and the block of townhouses that were built and caused quite a stir there. And I guess my questions pertain to, number one, the standard that we're using for an allowable variance. Number one, the 6-inch variance. And I guess my first question, my comment is that in this day and age, 6 inches seems like an almost intolerable allowance for a variance, given the technology and the lasers and all of this and the GPS that we have, that a surveyor cannot do any better than a 6-inch level of tolerance. So I guess my first question is that tolerance imposed because of the subdivision agreement, or is it imposed by the Ontario Building Code? Could you at least tell me where that 6-inch variance comes from?
It's imposed through the subdivision agreement in terms of a control architect. The control architect has determined that there is thresholds that could be met. However, there are on-site issues or circumstances where variations occur. In this case, the architect has ruled that 6 inches should be palatable to the development. It won't negatively affect the development. In this case, it was larger than 6 inches, and there was mitigations that are required because of it, and they were done through the control architect.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor. I think it's incumbent on us as a town, and not necessarily to rely on a review architect when we set standards. We shouldn't allow them to set the standards. We should be setting the standards. And quite frankly, 6 inches in this day and age is intolerable, particularly if one looks at the drainage plan in that particular subdivision, where you have a large degree of variance in the elevations, and then to have a variance of a further 6 inches and then an error on top of that. it seems it compounds a problem that already existed and would have existed even if there hadn't been an error there. The people to the west would have, and I think even when those foundations go in quite correctly, they're probably still going to have a great sense that they're being looked down upon because of the grade plan that's in that particular subdivision. So is there not a way that we as a town could set a standard and a set of steps that would eliminate the type of situation that we found ourselves in?
Mr. Glover.
If I may, I think the major problem with that subdivision isn't the 6 inches or the 12 inches, that's the variation. It's the height of the grade to begin with, which is raising it up. And that's an issue to deal with the connections of the servicing. And Mr. Manno could advise on that if you need that. But in terms of the variation of the architectural control, we don't currently have an architect on staff, so we wouldn't be able to have it internally. We'd have to have a consultant do it for us. What we do in this case is we have the applicant pay for the consultant. However, the consultant has to present something to our liking, to our standards, I guess. And then any variation in that, they would interpret as to how to mitigate that to maintain the proper standard of the entire subdivision. Unless we hire a separate, peer review consultant or have an architect on staff, I think it'd be difficult to manage that internally.
Mr. Mayor, through you, if I may, would it not be just as simple to impose in the subdivision agreement that, in fact, when the basement is dug, that the surveyor has to be there to set the pins for the foundation or the footing? He can take a grade shot at that point with reference points and certify that the foundation is in fact at the correct elevation. If that had been done, that error would have been caught before any concrete had been put in that hole. A secondary check could be at the top of foundation wall before any framing goes on, so that the onus is not on the design architect or the architectural review. The onus is put on the surveyor, who in fact is laid out the hole, is setting the pins. He's on site anyway and has all the equipment that could ensure that those foundations are going in at the correct grade, particularly in subdivisions where we are running into these grade problems that are quite significant. So it seems to me that
let's get an answer from Mr.
Yep.
Glover, and then if there's action that council wants to take, or committee wants to take to direct staff to investigate, I suggest
yeah, I'm
you do
just
that
asking
instead
whether
of-
that's possible. Mr. Mayor.
You're absolutely right in terms of the surveyor on site. In this case, it was unfortunate, and it is a rare occurrence as well. But there'd be additional costs for either, the developer and passed on to the homeowner for having a surveyor on site for each foundation, as well as in terms of the inspection of the height of the foundation before the floor was on. That's how this one was caught. Our inspectors went out and noticed that there was an issue with the grade and the height elevation of the foundation, and that's why this went through that whole process. And what you're referring to as well in terms of variation is one aspect of the building. There may be other aspects of the building which have variations or which may have slight deviations which need to be interpreted as well. The use of a control architect is very effective. Typically, this is an unusual situation. It doesn't happen. It is very rare that it happens. It's unfortunate this happened, and it was exacerbated, I guess, because of the height of the grade itself. If the grade had been lower than this one, there would have been I believe there'd been no concern. It's just it's been exacerbated.
Thank you.
May I continue? May I ask some more questions, Mr. Mayor?
In relation to this?
It's exactly the same problem.
I would suggest that we're not gonna solve this tonight. We don't have the appropriate information, so if you wanna direct staff to investigate something, come back with options, so this wouldn't happen again, I think that's a more appropriate course of action as opposed to trying to understand it all tonight.
Okay, all right, I'll meet with Mr. Glover and talk to him about that, and if there's some issues that need to come before
Okay.
council. for direction.
Just for clarity, I'm not saying it's not an important issue. I'm glad you're raising it. But I just think that it sounds like we can't solve it tonight. We're almost at curfew too. So, okay?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anything further, Councillor Kirsten, on any of the other items in the report? our other counselors on this issue? No? Anyone else? Just interesting, is this what this is saying? There's a building permit? So Sobeys did put in a building permit for an addition, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's 10,000, is that correct? Do you know the square footage?
Unfortunately, not offhand.
Okay.
It's 10,000.
Yeah, 10,000, which we approved a few years ago, okay. Anything about the East Font Hill appeal period, just quickly? I know that the appeal was out till 4:30 today. Maybe you can enlighten council and the community about what's happened.
For you, Mr. Mayor, there was 2 appeals lodged before the end of the appeal period. The appeals dealt with a condition. The appeals actually were on the zoning bylaw. However, they dealt with a condition of the subdivision. So I think there's some confusion as to the actual appeal. Nonetheless, I'm sure the board will entertain whatever the appeal is. The conditions that were appealed, though, dealt with the 20 highway, Regional Road 20, the reconfiguration or adjustments that may be necessary as a result of the subdivision that are subject to the region's approval.
Okay. So, timing, next steps, or is it too early?
Both appeals were exactly the same. So we're speaking with our solicitors tomorrow to understand the scope of the issue and how to mitigate and resolve it. As a result of that meeting with our solicitor, we hope to be in a position to meet with the appellants and perhaps negotiate a resolution to this prior to the OMB. However, because it is appealed, it will need to be resolved through the OMB, even if we come to a negotiated settlement.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate that update. Any others? There being none, I'm going to call the question on the report. Thank all those in favor. Any opposed? That motion's carried. Thank you. We do need a motion to extend, and I'm going to ask Councillor Kersey to move it. Moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by,
Was that an inference? I don't know.
any seconder? Councillor Ribbiak. Wow. That the rules of procedures contained in the Town of Pelham Procedure Bylaw be suspended, and that the specified curfew time of 10 be and are hereby waived, and the remainder of the business listed on the agenda continue until the set time of 10:30, or all of the matters have been concluded, whichever comes first. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Been moved by, thank you, Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Drilly. Committee of the Whole received the September 2014 Fire and Bylaw Services Report for information. Discussion. The fire prevention officer appointed the chair of the Niagara Regional Arson Committee. Congratulate her on behalf of council, please. Thank you for the information, Chief, on these NFPA standards. Very helpful. And I had a discussion with the CAO today about pool permits. I understand they're being done now by the Fire and Bylaw Services, and I just wondered if you'd include the issuance of pool permits in future reports. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Drolly. Committee of the Whole received the issues sheet Thursday night parking plan 2014 final report, and committee recommended council the implementation of the parking plan for 2015 as outlined in the report, and that the Thursday parking plan be considered in the 2015 operating budget. Discussion. Councillor Papp.
Great work. Fantastic. Very little problems this year, and we'll look forward to the staff, in particular Vicky, that this money is very enhanced. We had very little difficulty this year. Great job, and keep up that shuttle. Yeah. I was the only one using it.
Thank you. Well, there's a few others. Others? Yeah, just a great report. Thank you. I'm pleased that it, after all the, I think as Councillor earlier had stated with the other, after all of the concern about change, it's great to see that this worked, people got used to it, that parking issues were resolved. So we'll keep building on it. So thank you. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor King. Committee of the Whole received the September 2014 Recreation, Culture and Wellness Department report for information. Discussion. Councillor Papp.
Quickly, 30 seconds through you. Vicky, who are the new private users are they, that are asking for prime ice time?
Sorry, under number 6, Counselor?
Yeah. In the Pelham Arena, you said that for,
There's,
who exactly? Just
Ms. Van Ravensway.
they're just random calls,
random calls?
Yeah.
Okay, so no specific organizations?
no specific organizations. We
Okay.
have random calls, and we're trying to accommodate them. Actually, we have had additional calls for extra hockey training with private trainers.
Schools.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, that's all.
So we should probably mark that or
Should
do
keep an
something
eye
like
on
that.
that,
Keep an
yeah.
eye on that. Okay. Thank you. Others, just to that, the extra after-school public skating times, can you just inform council and how do we get the word out on that? I know there was some
Have,
concern by some folks about the loss of, or perceived loss of the public skating times.
We've added from 4 to 5 on Tuesdays and Fridays after school, as well as any night that, on Tuesday nights or Friday nights, that there are no Junior B games as well. Public skating would continue.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And we're going to get the word out to
Yep.
groups. Perfect. Anything else? And thank you for including the Communities in Bloom slide deck. It's great to see the gardens. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for your ongoing work. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Kirsty. Committee of the Whole receive the September 2014 Clerks Department report for information. Comments, questions? Councillor Pap.
30 seconds through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk. People that I've talked to during the course of the election, trying to understand the boundary change, you've done an incredible job explaining it to them. People are well informed, and that's exactly, it makes it a lot easier trying to maneuver around, and I wanted to thank you because, and people want to share that, because any requests for information were met timely, and people appreciated it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We certainly appreciate the work of the Clerks Department, and as it's, the report is mostly about that election, so lots of work regarding that. Others? Pleased to see that there will be, what is it called here? The cards that are going to be going out? Is that correct?
Notification packages, yes.
Voter notification packages. I had some,
Mailed it.
okay, I had some questions about that, so that's good. Anyone else?
Just,
Councillor?
as always, just as in keeping with our recognizing staff, I wanted to acknowledge Diane Bell.
About to.
You were going to do that? Okay,
No,
Mr.
go
Mayor.
ahead, Councillor.
You go right ahead. I always been a terrific person to
Yeah,
deal with.
absolutely.
Exceptional customer service, and I'm sorry to see her go, and I'm glad, that we have a suitable replacement, but best wishes to her.
Thank you, Councillor. And she always had a smile and was always busily working away, supporting the clerk and the deputy clerk and all of council. So best wishes to Diane on her retirement. Anyone else? Thank you, Councillor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Lane. Committee of the Whole received the September 2014 Chief Administrative Officer's report for information. Questions, comments? I guess I spoke already about the Urgent Care Center and the resolution of council and how the CAO is working on that. Can we hear a little bit about the design charrette, Mr. CAO, on the East Fawn Hill? Number 3?
Yes, there was a suggestion, Mr. Mayor, with regards to some of the cultural aspects of the design and what the public wanted. And the reason for that was that there's been some discussions around having a continuous theme or elements that carry throughout the development that speak to it. And there was a suggestion that we would consult the community on what that cultural design should look like and what those repeating elements should be. And it was also suggested that we would do a design charrette on that. So I think it's a
Great.
fabulous idea. And it's something that we'll be pursuing. And the person who suggested it, I believe, was yourself, so.
Oh, it was? I think that's as a result of somebody suggesting it to me, which is a resident that I happened to meet along a road as I knocked on a door. But anyways, just very, very intrigued by the park system and what's being proposed and wanted to have some input into it, so.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't
No,
have
it's
raised
an
it had
excellent
it been my.
It's an excellent idea.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Pap?
Just quickly, I'm glad, Mr. CEO, you've mentioned about the economic development on a, now what somewhat, I could say, melancholy note. It's been noticeable, as people have been mentioning to me, stores are closing downtown again, several vacant storefronts, and I can't wait for us to get going with the new economic development, because I just drove down the other day and I couldn't help but, I see empty, and I'm thinking, we got to rebuild this, restart this, get this going, and hopefully that'll be kickstart once we start with our new council. A couple of businesses I know that are also looking at selling. So we need to work with them somehow to encourage them to stay. Right? I mean, I'm sure you heard the same.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything on the data for that? Maybe it's appropriate now to try to resolve that data issue. Any further? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. CAO. It's been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Kersey, that this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular committee scheduled for Monday, November 3rd, 2014, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Just can't get out of here fast enough. I don't know. I don't know where it's gonna go.